In this screencast, I will demonstrate how to make custom markers in Inkscape version 0.46. Markers are symbols such as arrowheads or circles or polygons or any other shape that can be placed on vertices or nodes that make up a path. I'll run down how they are placed on a path, then illustrate a couple of methods for making a new marker symbol. A typical use for markers might be in the creation of diagrams, among other things. Let's get started. Alright, I'm going to grab my pen tool and I'm going to draw a path. Whoops. Let's select this node right here and delete it. All I want is a path with two nodes, a starting node and an ending node. Okay? Now I'll go to my fill and stroke dialog box, and it's this section here that I want to focus on. This is the marker section in the stroke style. I'm going to add a starting marker, so I'm going to hit my pull down here, and you'll notice in here that Inkscape has a number of markers to choose from. I'm going to choose this starting arrow, and I'm going to select an end marker, and I'm going to choose the ending arrow. Okay, now when I do that, you can see that I have a brand new arrowhead on the point of my marker. Okay, and that's basically how markers work. And those are great for, like I said before, making diagrams or leaders or anything like that. Now let's take a look at mid markers. Okay, mid markers are markers that can be placed on the vertices that are on a path. So right now we only have two. We have a starting and an ending. What if we had more? So let's go ahead and select this. I'll go to my node tool. I'll select both nodes and I'll add a node in between. Now I can place a mid marker, and just for this example I'll place the arrow start marker, and that'll put one anywhere that I have nodes here. Okay? Now that I have the mid marker set up, what I can do is select my node tool, select all my nodes, and add a couple more, and you'll see that markers will be automatically placed on any new nodes, just like we have here. Now I can take those, move them anywhere I want, and you see that my markers follow the end node. Okay, and that's basically how nodes work. Or I'm sorry, that's basically how markers work. Okay, markers just get placed anywhere on a path that you have a node. Okay, now let's take a look at making custom nodes, or I'm sorry, custom markers. I got nodes on the brain right now. Okay, let's say for example we wanted to just make a circle for a marker. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle. I'll just make this a perfect circle by holding the control key down. And we'll leave that red. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is, keeping that highlighted, I'm going to go to my object, objects to marker, and I'm going to select that object. And you can see that the object disappears. Now I'm going to draw a new path. And I'm going to come here to our markers, and I should see my new marker showing up, and I didn't. Okay, so let's try that again. I'm gonna delete. Well, actually, I'm gonna undo. I'll grab this again, and this time we'll go to objects to marker. Okay. I'll draw my path. Okay, and this time I've got it. For some reason, I don't know if it's a bug. But you may have to do that once or twice to get the marker to show up in Inkscape version 0.46. Okay, so I do have the marker shown up here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and place my marker. Okay, so I'm going to have my starting marker here, and you see that my marker is now placed on my start point. Okay, now I can go ahead and add an ending marker. Same thing. and I can go ahead and add mid markers if I wish to have my marker placed on every node. And what's cool about this is if you're making like a connected dot type thing, this would be a neat thing to use. So anywhere I move my node, my marker will follow. Okay? And that's how you make custom markers. Now I can do that with any shape, by the way. Okay? So if I delete this and say for example I want a star as a marker, I can make this a little bit smaller. I can select my star, go to Object, Object to Marker, draw a path, and again I didn't quite get my marker. That's still my other marker. So I'm going to undo. Try this again. Objects to Marker, draw a path, and there we got the new marker. Again, I don't know if that's a bug or what's going on. There we go. Now I've got my star shape, and I can add the star as mid markers, and I can add an ending star. Okay, and that's how that works. Okay, let's take another look at adding custom markers. But let's say, for example, we want to use a marker all the time, or we want to use the same marker every single time for multiple projects, and we don't want to have to go in and set up the marker. Well, we can add markers to our markers SVG file, so that way when we open up Inkscape, we've always got that marker handy for us. Adding custom markers this way is very similar to the patterns screencast that I made a while back. When you want to make custom patterns, for example, you can add a new pattern to the master patterns file in Inkscape. That way when you open up Inkscape, you'll have that pattern available. Well, markers work the same way. So let's take a look at setting up a marker this way. But before I begin, what I need to do is draw a shape. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just draw a square for now. And we'll zoom in on this. And I can get rid of this. And I'm going to take this square that I've drawn and I'm going to make it a object to path. And I'm going to select these two nodes and we'll add a node in between. And I'm going to delete these nodes here. So I want to make a shape just like this, and we'll just bend this in a little bit. Okay, so this is our new arrowhead. Okay, and in order to make or in order to add this to our markers master file, I need to place the marker at this corner point of my page. Okay, the marker, it's important to understand that when a path gets added to a marker or a marker gets added to a path, it gets placed on the marker's center point. Okay, so if I were to have a path here, this marker will be snapped on to the marker center point. You can see my crosshairs right here, so that would be about somewhere right in here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some guides down, and I'll double click on this guide and make this 600. My document is set up for 600 or 800 by 600. I'll hit 0 here, and that basically puts markers right on this corner. Now what I'm going to do is go to File, Document Properties, we'll go to Snap Points, and I'll select Rotation Center. That way when I move this, my crosshair gets snapped right onto these guides. Okay? So now I'm going to hold my Control key down and get rid of these guides because I don't need them anymore. And we'll make this marker, we'll make this one blue. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is select this marker. And I'm going to first, before I do that, let's back up a step. Let me navigate to where our master marker file is, okay? So let me think here. It's going to be in, I'm on Ubuntu 904. It's going to be in my user share Inkscape markers directory. And you'll notice in there that I'll have just, or you'll have just one file called markers.svg. I've gone ahead and advanced and copy and pasted a version of the original and just put an underscore there, so I have a version of the original in case I mess something up. I can always step back to what I had before. Okay, so you want to make sure that your markers get added to this markers SVG file. Okay, so let's minimize that for now. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to open up that markers SVG file. Okay, and when you do, it's basically a big SVG document, but if you open it up in a text viewer, you'll see the XML elements on the inside. Okay, it's this section right here. These are markers. This is an example of a starting marker and an ending marker. Okay, you have a starting marker here, which it's called arrow start, and then you have an ending marker, which it's basically the same thing, except here they've rotated it 180 degrees. Well, this section right here is what we want to add for our new marker. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this right here, both of these sections, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to hit enter a few times to give myself some space so I can see what I'm doing. And I'll go ahead and enter here. Okay, so this is going to be our starting marker. This is going to be our ending marker. Okay, so let's minimize. Let's go back to our shape that we want to make a marker, and I'm going to highlight this. We're going to go to our XML document viewer, and we can see the style here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the D attribute, and I'm going to copy everything. I'll open up my markers SVG, and I'm going to find the D element here. Okay, now I'm going to carefully overwrite this element with my new element, or new properties, I guess. Maybe that's a better term. Okay, I'm going to go back to my Inkscape document. So we'll minimize this. I'm going to highlight the style attribute, and I'm going to copy its properties. We'll open up our master's SVG file, and we'll find the style property, and we'll overwrite it with our style. I'll do that for both of them. Okay, where are you here? Style. Okay, and I don't have a transform property here. Matter of fact, is that what it's called? Translate property. I don't have a translate property since I placed my object center point right on the corner of my page. Okay, if I have moved that off somewhere, then I would have a translate property. But it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put my translate property to 0, 0 on both of them. That'll make sure that my object, its center point, gets added to the very end point of my path. Okay, now we're going to give this a new name. I'm going to give this, we'll just call this new. Okay, so we'll change the ID property, and we'll change the Inkscape stock ID property. We'll do that on both of them. Now this one's called start here, this one's called end. The end is exactly the same as the start, except that it's rotated 180 degrees. Okay, so we have a new start and we have a new end, and here I want to make sure that I have 180 degrees here and not here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save this. We'll minimize that, and we'll close Inkscape to restart or to reload our master's marker file. So I'm going to go ahead and close out on this. And I'm going to open up Inkscape again. Okay, and let me resize that real quickly. There we go. Okay, now if I've done this correctly, now when I start a new path, I should have my marker already loaded in Inkscape. And here it is. Here's my new start and my new end. Okay, so I'll go ahead and select that. And I'll go ahead and select an end. And here are my markers. So if you think you're going to be doing lots of documents using the same marker, it might be advantageous to open up your markers.svg master file, add all the shapes and the symbols that you want to add to it. That way when you open up Inkscape for the first time, or every time, you'll have those markers already in there. If you just need a new marker for a session, then I would suggest you go to Object, Objects to Marker. That was the first way of getting a new marker in. You just want to be careful though, because as you add new markers, if you add new markers that aren't being used, if you go ahead and vacuum the defects or in the document, you will lose those markers, so you want to be very careful. Okay, so that was basically our screencast on making markers. Markers, I use markers a lot of times for just drawing leaders. For example, if I want to open up a bitmap, for example, and I want to point to a certain section on the bitmap, maybe I'll want to draw a leader to it with some text off to the side explaining the area. And that's what these markers come in handy for. They're very nice for drawing leaders and arrowheads, basically. But it doesn't have to stop there, for example. So we can select this, and there are a lot of options in here for markers, and one of them that's kind of handy. Let me find it. There is a scissors marker. And we can give this a something about like that. Now I got this example from Tav on his Inkscape manual site. Okay, and we can zoom in on this, and you can see the use of markers here. So if you were drawing something that required somebody to cut the image out, this would be a neat little effect to add around it, so showing that that's where you need to cut. So that's basically markers. So I hope that explained the use, and if you already knew about markers, well, I don't know, maybe you found something handy in here, and if you didn't know anything about markers, then maybe you've learned something. So thank you for watching. I'm Heathen X.